I'll take the stairs, but stepping into it will be a first step, so to speak. Then maybe next week I'll take it up a floor." She shuddered at the thought of the elevator doors closing behind her, locking her in a cubicle not much bigger than a coffin.
"Pretty soon, you won't need me anymore."
"I'm always going to need you." She wondered how serious he was with that statement. It was true that she needed Ken in ways most people didn't need a partner. He was the driver any time they traveled more than a few miles from home. He was her rescuer when she'd have a panic attack in the supermarket, standing in the middle of an aisle with a full cart of groceries. He was the one holding onto her arm as he guided her through the mall or the concert hall or wherever they happened to be when her heart started pounding. "I would just like to not need you that way. And I have to do this, Ken. I want that job." She'd been offered a position that would start the following September, training teachers in Wake County to use a reading curriculum in which she'd become expert. That meant driving. A lot of driving. There would be 6-lane highways to travel and bridges to cross and elevators she would have no choice but to ride. September was nearly a year away, and she was determined to have her fears mastered by then. "Kenny?" She pulled closer to him, nervous about the topic she was about to broach. "There's something else we really need to talk about." His muscles tightened ever so slightly beneath her hands.
"The pregnancy,"
he said. She hated when he called it the pregnancy. She guessed she'd misread his smile earlier. "About the baby," she said. "Right." He let out a sigh.
"Core, I've thought about it and I just don't think it's the right time. Especially with you starting a new job next year. How much stress do you need?"
"It would work out," she said. "The baby's due in late May. I'd take the end of the year off and have the summer to get used to being a mom and find daycare and everything." She smoothed her hand over her stomach. Was it her imagination or was there already a slight slope to her belly? "We've been together so long," she continued. "It just doesn't make sense for me to have an abortion when I'm almost 27 and you're 38, and we can afford to have a child." She didn't say what else she was thinking. Of course, we'd have to get married, finally. They'd been engaged and living together for 4 years, and if her pregnancy forced them to set a date, that was fine with her. He gave her shoulders a squeeze, then sat up.
"Let's talk about it later, okay?"
he said. "When?" she asked. "We can't keep putting this off."
"Later tonight," he promised.
She followed his gaze to the phone on the night table. The message light was blinking. He picked up the receiver and punched in their voicemail code, then listened.
3 messages,
he said, hitting another button on the phone. The light in the room had grown dim, but she was still able to see him roll his eyes as he listened to the first message.
"Your mother,"
he said.
"She says it's urgent."
"I'm sure." Corinne managed to laugh. Now that Drew had spilled the news of her pregnancy to their parents, she'd probably be getting urgent calls every day. Her mother had already emailed her to tell her that redheads were more prone to hemorrhaging after delivery. "Thanks a heap, Mom." She hadn't bothered to reply. She hadn't spoken with her mother more than a few times in the past 3 years.
"There's one from Drew, too,"
Ken said.
"She says to call her the minute you get the message."
That was more worrisome. An urgent message from her mother was easy to ignore. From her sister, less so. "I hope there's not anything wrong," she said, sitting up.
"They would have called you on your cell if it was so important,"
he said, still holding the phone to his ear. "True." She got out of bed and pulled on her short green robe, then picked up her phone from the dresser and turned it on. "Except I didn't have my cell on today because of the field trip, so—"
"What the—"
Ken frowned as he listened to another message.
"What the hell are you talking about?"
he shouted into the phone. Glancing at his watch, he walked across the room to turn on the television. "What's going on?" Corinne watched him click through the channels until he reached WIGH, the Raleigh station for which he was a reporter.
"That was a message from Darren,"
he said as he punched another phone number into the receiver.
"He's kicking me off the Gleason story."
"What?"